Defense plants are the men-at-arms of Plants vs Zombies 2. They protect all your plants, so in a way they have the biggest responsibility. Without them, your attack plants and sim producers are more prone to falling apart. But then the question is asked, what are the worst and best defense plants of Plants vs Zombies 2? Okay, maybe not everyone is asking that, but I am. So in this video, we're gonna go over every single defense plant in PVZ 2. This means most of the plants in the reinforcement family, although with the exception of 3, Holly Barrier, Peanut, and Aloe. Peanut's already been in my pea shooter tier list, and Holly Barrier will be in another tier list, you guys will see eventually. And I don't really consider Aloe a defense or stop plant in comparison to wall plants like Endurian or Vamporcini. Speaking of Vamporcini, there's also plants that aren't in the reinforcement family that I still consider defense plants that you'll see in this list. Now, let's get to it, shall we? I think it's pretty clear that Tangler is one of those modern PVZ 2 plants that aren't exactly liked amongst the PVZ 2 community. But I'm gonna say a hot take. Tangler's design is actually pretty nice. I like the way they incorporate the leaves, it almost look like hair, and it seems to have some sort of personality design-wise. It looks like a chill, laid-back surfer dude, until you read the almanac and realize that's not what the team was going for at all, so there goes that. But whatever, let's talk about how the Tangler works. The Tangler can be placed on gravestones. On its own, it has a total of 2,500 toughness. But when it's placed on a grave, 80% of the gravestone's current health would add on to the Tangler. Typically, gravestones have 700 health in total, and it's always best to put Tanglers on full graves anyways. 80% of 700 is 560, so we're looking at Tangler having an overall defense of 3,060. This really isn't that much. Obviously, it's more than just a defense plant. It has a 50% chance to drag down zombies, though this isn't much of a difference that makes Tangler any better, as PVZ 2 loves to overrun the lawn with zombies, so dragging zombies one by one isn't exactly a great useful idea either, especially when honestly 3060 health really isn't that much overall. It can be even less as you might place Tanglers down on graves that don't have its highest health. I do believe the worst part of Tangler though is the fact that Tangler is very situational. And situational plants are already bad enough, but this is a situational defense plant, so a grave might be far from the front rows, so that immediately removes Tangler as an option, and only 2 world top gravestones, so Tangler is just super limited and sucks at the role it has, making him the worst defense plant on this list. I just hate how limited he is and how he does have potential, but I can't name a situation where you want to use him. Gravestones are way too randomized, so why would you use anything but the Gravebuster? I'm gonna have to unfortunately place Tangler into the bad tier. A good design with a lot of wasted potential. Vamporcini is another example of a pretty good design, but it completely fails conceptually. Tangler actually isn't worse than Vamporcini. I think they're both horrible equally. One isn't worse than the other. But how does Vamporcini work? Well, Vamporcini starts with 2070 health. Yep, 2070 health. For context, Gumnut has 4,000. Vamporcini starts with a smaller health than a basic defense plant. She's able to observe HP from surrounding zombies in a 3x3 area for 6 seconds, and it will add to its health. After observing this said health, Vamporcini would eventually fall asleep, acting as a barrier and waking up a little bit later. Its health cap is 4,000. 4,000 only. Its recharge is 20 seconds and it's doubled Gumnut's health, and it has the audacity for its highest health to only be 4,000, the same as Gumnut? This is genuinely really stupid. Not only is it situational as it depends on what zombies are around it, but its limitation is the same as Gumnut. What were they thinking when creating Vamporcini? You know it's bad when the wiki strongly advises not to use it. The only very tiny redeeming quality is that supposedly it has a pretty thin hitbox compared to other wall plants, but even then it doesn't make much of a difference. Because of this, I'm gonna have to put Vamporcini right next to Tangler, tied with him as 2 of the worst defense plants of Plants vs Zombies 2. I don't really understand Garlic in Plants vs Zombies 2, at least in the context that he's placed in. What I mean by this is that when you unlock Garlic, you unlock him in Neon Mixtape Tour. The world where zombies literally don't chew on plants in certain situations, like the glitter zombie who just runs plants over, the MC zombie who can insta-kill multiple plants, or the punk zombie who can knock plants back. So yeah, why did they add Garlic here? Garlic in the first game was 10 times better with the fact that zombies actually chewed on him, so he was useful. but now he's just horrid in the world he's in. But garlic isn't just impractical solely because he is unviable in the world he's in, but he is also significantly worse compared to its predecessor for two reasons. One, for some unexplainable reason, there's a delay after a zombie's first bite, meaning a zombie can chew in the garlic more than once. The garlic has more toughness in the first game, 600, yet somehow it feels like it's destroyed more often with the fact that it's bitten more than just once. Not just that, but it's harder to place it down now because PodCap had the genius idea of making the recharge time 20 seconds rather than 7 like in the first game. Because of this, the concept of garlic falls apart. I really think they should have thought him out more, especially when there are defense plans in this video with a similar premise that in my opinion are 10 times better. Sorry garlic, but you're gonna have to go in the bad tier. There really isn't much to say about Walnut. He's a default, but I do believe that overall you're not gonna use him at all further into the game. In ancient Egypt, maybe, but that's because he'll be the only defense plant you have. You'll need him, yeah, but that doesn't mean he's good, with a mere 4000 toughness. Of course he's not gonna be any higher, he's the basics of defense. I still love him though, he was cuter in PVZ 1, but I still think he's neat. I'm gonna put him in the bad tier, but he's the highest out of all of them because he's an OG, and the others are those. Murkadamia Nut is strange. It's meant to be a combination of Endurian and the Infinite, which equals Murkadamia, but there are issues. Before I talk about the issues, let's talk about the statistics. Murkadamia Nut by itself has only 2500 toughness. That's pretty bad, which means by itself, it's a pretty horrible plant. But when it's powered by a Moonflower, Gloomvine, or Nectarine, it's an additional 1500. 4000 being in total. Same toughness as Walnut, which means that even when it's powered, the defense is still the same as a basic defense plant. So, why is it up here? Well, there's at least some additional qualities to it. The reason why I say it's a combination of the two plants I mentioned above. It's because Murkadamia Nut can heal itself by 100 every few seconds. Around 6 seconds to be exact. That's pretty fast as Infinite does take 15. That's because Infinite heals stages fully. Like I said, Murkadamia Nut only heals around 100 health those said few seconds. What makes him similar to Endurian is that as a zombie is shooting on it, it will mirror 25% of whatever damage it will take. So if a zombie is shooting on it, a zombie typically does 100 damage, it will be around 50 damage towards that said zombie. This is more than the damage Endurian does, so why is the Murkadamia Nut all the way down here in the eh tier? Well, the reason why is because of how dependent it is to be powered. Without it, it's one of the worst defense plans ever. So when you use it, it's pretty much forcing you to use Moonflower or whatever other shadow powered plant. It's not that Moonflower is crap or anything, but I believe that shadow plants should still be useful on their own, without being reliant on other plants to make them stronger. Nightshade and Grimrose have a similar problem. It doesn't help that there's shadow plants that are just way better to use rather than using defense, like Shadow Pea Shooter or Dragon Brute. So yeah, I don't really recommend Murkadamia Nut with how contingent it is, therefore unfortunately ended it up in the eh tier. Beansprout is such a weird plant. Beansprout was released on 2023. The reason why I bring this up is because Beansprout is literally just Kiwibeast. Respectfully, a worse kind of Kiwibeast. A plant that was released in 2016, which is animated smoother, looks better, and works better conceptually too, but we'll get to him later. Let's talk about Beansprout. Beansprout only has a short 2000 toughness. First of all, that's already horrible health for a wall plant. They could have increased the toughness of this plant just a little bit, at least up to the walnut if they want to make it balanced. Beansprout though is obviously more than just a wall plant. When it takes 1400 damage, it will suddenly transform into a monster and become a temporary melee plant that will deal punches every 0.36 seconds, dealing 30 damage. Again, this is temporary as once the Beansprout doesn't have any more targets, it will revert back to its passive state. But the best part about it is that once it does revert, all its health will regenerate. This would be pretty effective if it wasn't for the fact that since its health is so low, a horde of zombies or stronger ones will overwhelm the Beansprout, and so you can't really trust it to be the best defense plant. Overall, it's just unoriginal. Even the monster form seems to be ripped off of the Kiwibeast concept art. It was clear that by this point, PodCap had been running out of ideas, and the design is just really ugly. I'm not sure if it's a stiff animation, but it's not a very charming looking plant. Sorry Beansprout, but you're going in the yeah tier. Kiwibeast. Hey, if the Beansprout copied off of him, he must be a good plant, right? I mean, he is a pretty good plant. but he has the same problem as Beansprout does. He has the same amount of toughness, 2000, which again is lower than Walnut, so it really falls apart as a defense plant. The difference between Beansprout and Kiwibeast is that Beansprout only attacks after it takes 1400 damage, but Kiwibeast consistently deals damage, so it runs by 3 stages. On its first stage, it only deals 40. On its second, it'll deal 50, then lastly, on its third, it'll deal a high 70 damage. That's pretty impressive, but again, it's so vulnerable to attack because of how low its defense is. I will give it that its attack is pretty heavy once it reaches the final stage, and it can knock zombies one tile away, but unfortunately, it's still not a great defense plant. Of course, we have Reinforcement. He's pretty much a support of any defense plant. Out of the 3 mints I've rated, I would say he's my second favorite. He can be pretty useful actually. He does give boosts, which I will listen a little bit, but he does more than just amplify a defense plant's toughness or attack. It will trigger the plant food of every plant in the Reinforcement family. This can be pretty effective if you have a full lane of defense plants and you want to power them up, especially if a few of them are low in health. Like I said, he also gives boost. Beansprout is given an additional 50 damage. Blockoli is given an additional 325 damage, and he's able to absorb an additional 16,000 damage. Chard-Guard can absorb an additional 3,000 damage. Endurian can absorb an added 5,000, and can deal an extra 80 attack now. Garshroom's health is increased by 1,000, also dealing an additional 1,000 damage as well. Gumnut's gum can absorb an additional 20,000 damage. Sweet Potato can absorb an added 8,500 damage. Infinite has an added 4,500 damage, with Primal Walnut having 11,000. Tangler can also absorb an additional 32,000 damage. Walnut can absorb an additional 8,000, and Pumpkin is able to absorb an additional 8,000 damage. So yeah, these boosts are pretty extraordinary. But what is the problem with Reinforcement? Well, it has the same problem as the other mints. It's a waste of a seed slot with the fact that it's only on the lawn for a small 8 seconds, at least on level 1, and once it disappears, you have to wait a whopping 85 seconds, which is insane as other instant plants like Cherry Bomb only take 35 seconds, so I don't really see why you would bring the Reinforcement. PVZ 2 levels are way too short that you'll only be able to use him once. I think it's obviously on purpose, as any smaller cooldown would make the mint way too powerful, but I just don't see the point in using him with how limited your seed slots can be. Effective, but you won't be using him much in Adventure. At least he'd be somewhat useful in Arena. He's going in the OK tier. Hot Date is one of those plants that isn't really talked about amongst people that play PVZ2. That's because it's similar to Beansprout, where it's literally the exact same plant as another one, Sweet Potato, but in fact I believe it's worse, cause Hot Date is literally exactly like Sweet Potato, except the fact that when Hot Date is eaten, it'll leave a trail of fire. At least Hot Date is better than Garlic because it doesn't have to be chewed on, which means a lot of zombies can go towards it way. Though, good luck keeping Hot Date for too long. The major problem with Hot Date is that he only has 1000 toughness, which is really low, he's pretty weak. Somehow though, it's higher than Garlic, though an extra 400 more toughness, so it has an identical problem that you're prone to losing it easily, which means you'll definitely have to replant it again, and again, and again. This makes it a little annoying, as typically with plants like these, you're going to want to concentrate on a smaller amount of lanes compared to the usual, so you don't want zombies concentrating on lanes you're trying to move them away from. Hot Date gives a player that opportunity to stray zombies away from 3 or 2 lanes, where you can use plants like Fat Beet, you're protecting a row of endangered plants, or you just want to limit yourself to a few lanes just because. Hot Date's low toughness kinda ruins his purpose, as once you lose Hot Date and you're waiting for him to reach charge or something, you're kinda cooked. I believe the reason why they made his toughness fairly low compared to Sweet Potato though is because of its jalapeno like Trail of Fire, which deals 1000 damage. For comparison, it is less than jalapenos, as jalapeno does 1800, probably because jalapeno is an instant plant and Hot Date isn't, though 1000 is still a lot of damage and enough to kill a lot of zombies. So yeah, it's not a bad plant at all, and it's pretty good at its job, but the only downside is how easy it is to get chewed on if it's overrun with zombies, as 1000 toughness just isn't enough. And honestly, use jalapenos instead when you want to kill a bunch of zombies in one lane rather than Hot Date. It's going in the OK tier. Sweet Potato. Pretty much the better Hot Date, which is why she's on the same tier. Sweet Potato is 10 times better than Garlic for the same reason. Zombies don't have to chew on it. Even zombies and machines can move towards Sweet Potato and ignore whatever lanes you want them to ignore. Sweet Potato is great, just like Hot Date, but the reason why I recommend Sweet Potato so much more than Hot Date is because Sweet Potato has a lot more toughness. 4,000. The same as Walnut, though I think that's enough with how useful Sweet Potato could be. If you really want something similar to Hot Date, I would suggest using Sweet Potato and have Jalapeno with an imitator copy. Boom, you get a better garlic on top of Hot Date's mechanism that does a lot more damage. Voila. The problem with Sweet Potato isn't necessarily Sweet Potato's fault, but the game's. Even with Sweet Potato's 4,000 toughness, most of the time a lot of zombies can easily one-shot plants or eat them fairly quickly, so using a plant that's very dependent on being so close range, that also brings a bunch of zombies from other lanes into one. It's not necessarily a good idea in some situations, but that's just some situations. It also doesn't help that Sweet Potato isn't cheap, costing 150 sun. I still think she can be practical when need be, therefore earning its spot on the high OK tier. Bramble Bush. One of the newer plants released in 2022. Typically the newer plants is when the game started to decline in quality, but I don't think the Bramble Bush is horrible. It's not great, there are way better plants in comparison to it, but it's no Vamporcini either. How the Bramble Bush work is that he'll trap whatever zombie is close proximity to it. The Bramble Bush will continuously hurt the said zombie, dealing 30 damage. It will be left vulnerable, but whatever zombies are trying to chew it will also be dealt with this continuous 30 damage. That's pretty crazy damage to be honest, because it's 30 every half second. That's really effective and it can easily kill tougher zombies if it captures one, even gargantuars. For a low 125 sun cost, that's competent. Another thing that makes the bush so serviceable is the fact that he can remove whatever armor a zombie has, and whatever zombie is captured cannot escape the trap, no matter what. No mercy it seems. But of course, when it comes to a plant like this, there's also defects. You can see that the Bramble Bush has berry clusters. These are actually visual cues. The bush has a limited amount of times it could trap a zombie, 3 to be exact. When there are no more berry clusters on the Bramble Bush, it will disappear. This makes the Bramble Bush fall apart as a plant. It shouldn't straight up vanish once it runs out. It'd be a much better plant if it stays on the lawn and continues to defend even without berry clusters. Because as a defense plant, it's not like Kiwibeast where Kiwibeast sucks at defending since it's pretty vulnerable when on its first stage, but it still has that problem where while it's keeping a zombie trapped, it's exposed to a lot of zombies, killing it easily. It only has 1300 toughness after all. It really should have more because it would work better as not just a singular selling plant, but a boulder as well. Although I have to give the plant, his recharge time is only 5 seconds, so you can easily replace it as soon as it disappears too. Especially when a 125 sun plant really isn't that much in this game. So yeah, personally, it is a great plant that can target stronger zombies, but once it's its turn to defend, it's going to get a little worrying. I think it does deserve a spot in the good tier though. I'm actually surprised that Endurian isn't really that loved and people don't really think Endurian is a good defense plant. Yeah, it's not the greatest defense plant ever, it does have its issues, but overall I actually think it's a great plant in the world that it's in. Lost City, unlike a plant like garlic, because it just fits well. Plants like lava guava and Stalia, especially Stalia, is a good combination from that same world with Endurian, because Stalia could slow down a zombie's chewing speed, allowing the Endurian to deal a lot more damage. 20 to be exact. Every second as a shoot-on, which can be hefty against smaller health zombies. I just think if you use Endurian around the beginning of a level, before zombies become overwhelming, that's when he shines. He's not like Murkadamia Nut where he depends on something else to be powerful. Using Stalia is mostly just an additional benefit, and Endurian isn't completely useless without that set star. I must emphasize though that during the beginning of levels are when he shines the best, providing as a quick defense plant that only has a small 15-second recharge, costing only 100 sun, and it does good enough damage, a little more compared to spike weeds. It's also an easy way to handle the most annoying PVZ2 zombies, zombie chickens, and jester zombies, and that's pretty much already a plus. But we cannot ignore Endurian's toughness, a small 3000, smaller than walnuts. It's a little surprising that a lot of defense plants like to have a lower toughness than walnut. Maybe I'm doubting him after all, but whatever. Endurian being 1000 less is very apparent when zombies begin to swarm in, which is why I want to specify that he's good either in levels that aren't that staggering or the beginning of levels with how fast it recharges and its low sun cost. Endurian is a good plant for people that don't want to waste their gems on a defense plant or don't want to pay money for one. He also looks awesome. I'm a little biased over his design admittedly. Good tier. Buttercup is a good example of a simplistic plant that's actually great without having to be complicated. Buttercup is an easy, straightforward plant. She's adorable, cute, and I have to say, it's a great styling plant. even when there isn't that much to her. How Buttercup works is clear cut. When a zombie attacks her, she will throw butter, similar in vein to Kernapol, stunning them and leaving them buttered for around 8 seconds, leaving you for opportunities that I will elaborate on later when I explain why I like her so much. She doesn't just simply butter when zombies chew on her though, she will leave butter on her tile which will last for 2 minutes. When zombies step on this tile, before they can chew on the Buttercup, they will get damaged and buttered immediately. Anyway, what makes Buttercup a good stalling plant is the fact that it will leave perfect opportunities for other attack plants. What I mean by this is that once a zombie is buttered, the butter can do heavy damage. 100, which is obviously a lot, lowering a zombie's health significantly and allowing whatever attack plants you have in the bag to kill whatever zombie is frozen. Similar to Endurian, what puts it up in this list is its recharge time and sun cost as well. It's easily spammable. It only costs 25 sun and only has a 10-second recharge. You can place as many Buttercups as you want without any repercussions. You lose one, you can immediately place another one. This also makes Buttercup a really good starter plant, similar in vein to Potato Mine, where while placing on your sunflowers, you can stall out beginning zombies until you have a good setup. Buttercup does have its problems though. She's going to be tremendously vulnerable against large groups or gargantuars. Also, a little fun fact I didn't know about, Buttercup is actually from that crappy PVZ 3 3D version from a long time ago. Now I'm confused on why they added her, that's pretty random. I know they did the same thing with Nightcap, but anyway, it belongs in the high good tier. Pumpkin, in my opinion, was a freaking legend in PVZ 1. And to be honest, he's still a legend in the second game. At the end of the day, zombies are still way too powerful, but I still think Pumpkin holds up as they're still used to him. Just like he did in the first game, having the same toughness as well, 4000. He gives any other defense plants extra defense, providing a defense boost way better than something like the reinforcement with the fact that it actually stays on the lawn the entire time. So he is indeed the best defense support out of all defense plants in PVZ 2. He's technically a vine plant. I mean, he's placed on top of plants and provides a boost, so I think it counts, meaning he is the first vine of the game. There are a lot of plants now in the second game that are really beneficial when there's a pumpkin protecting it, like melee plants, as melee plants are extra vulnerable since they require zombies to be up close. Or better defense plants that I will talk about later, like the Chard-Guard, which can still hurl zombies even when there's a pumpkin on top of it. Or especially hot dates or sweet potatoes, since unlike garlics, they don't need to be chewed on, as I emphasized so many times by now. Or even other plants that aren't just melee or defense ones, like the Snapdragon, Jack-o'-lantern, Fat Beet, and many others. So yeah, I believe pumpkin is the best way to create a support plant. It's balanced and can be perfect for a lot of plants in PVZ too. There's a lot of use to it. I do gotta say though, I don't know why they use this design in particular, really weird looking. There's a reason why mods like Reflourish have a completely different design. The lines to create the face look way too smooth and symmetrical, when Pumpkin's face is meant to be carved. It's fine, great tier. Tana. Tana is still a great plant. He's in the great tier for a reason, but somehow I'm still a little sad with what they did with him in this game. Let's start with what puts him in this tier in the first place, his high toughness. Tana is still the plant with the strongest toughness in the game, just like he was in the first, with a whopping 8000 toughness. I'm glad the game still chose to make him the strongest plant. Well, okay, there is another plant that has the same toughness, but we'll talk about him later. Putting Tana any lower would be silly because his toughness is really high. Yes, his sun cost is extra like it was in the first game, but like I said for the other plants, I don't really think it's an issue to get sun in this game. And it makes up for it with its high performance with its increased durability. And similar to Pumpkin, I believe Tana is an amazing plant for close range melee plants, or Snapdragon, or blocking overwhelming amounts of zombies. But why am I so devastated with him? Well, because he can't block zombies as much as he could in the first game. There isn't so much use to him. He's able to block flying zombies, bull riders, balloon zombies, but I feel like he could have done more. Like he should have been able to stand in the water in Big Wave Beach like they have in PVZ 2 Groundedless, or immune to zombies like the Excavator or Fisher Zombie. He had a lot of potential, but hey, at least his toughness is still the highest of the game, deserving its place in this tier, right next to Pumpkin. Chard-Guard is a wonderful stalling plant just like Buttercup is, though in my opinion he's way better. He does have a small toughness, 1500, though just as long as he doesn't run out of leaves, you shouldn't be too worried about him being eaten. He can hurl all the zombies that are around it, pushing zombies back 3.125 tiles to be exact. I will say that once he loses his leaves, he does suck overall as a defense plant, but let's ignore that part because refilling his leaves should be really easy. He has a short sun cost, 75, with a short 15-second recharge that by the time the Chard-Guard runs out of leaves, you should be able to refill its leaves again. especially if you're using imitator for it, which I obviously recommend. Having a low-cost, simple starting plant like Chard-Guard with a massive knockback that's enough to push away gargantuars, and he's unlockable purely through progression, it makes sense why I would put him in such a high tier. There's really not much else to say about him. He's probably the only Frostbite Cave plant that's worth it, and makes Spring Breeze a way worse plant than he already is. Right tier. Gumnut is crazy powerful. Situational? Oh yeah, but crazy powerful. She is who I was talking about if it wasn't clear when I talked about another plant being just as strong, if not even sometimes stronger than Tana. One thing I like about Gumnut is that I personally believe she's one of the more unique defense plants. Her mechanics and how she works in general stands out from other defensive plants. So let me explain how she works. She can trap whatever zombies are around the area with gum and mobilizing them. This gum's health is 8,000, the same as Tanut's. But believe it or not, this gum's health can actually be more than purely 8,000. The gum's health scales with that of the targeted zombie proportionately. There's a formula for Gumnut's gum, followed as gum base health plus zombie health times the gum health boost, which is 300%, divided by 100. For example, let's say a standard Gargantuar's health is 3,600. So it'd be the gum base health, 8,000, plus the Garg's health times 300, the gum health boost number, divided by 100. This makes 18,800. This would be the gum's health if they were to trap a Gargantuar. I like how creative this mechanism is. It's different, and I like different. I like unique plants, and Gumnut is unique. Unfortunately, I can't put him in the amazing tier only because if the zombie were to die, then that gum disappears immediately, so you really would have to capture a zombie that's hard to kill so you could stall out zombies more. With how high Gumnut's health could be, and how effective it can be against stronger zombies, since it can withstand Gargantuar hits, I'm gonna have to put it in the high grade tier. Now we're heading for the speed round, where we rate the next plants quickly before I talk about the final one. This is just because they're plants that either there's not much to say about them as they're very self-explanatory on why they're in the amazing tier in the first place, or they're just defensive plants that have been talked about way more than enough at this point that it's just socially acceptable to call them the best defense plants. Let's start. Bramble Nut. One of the most ideal defensive plants in general in the second game for 2 reasons. It only has a short 5-second recharge for a plant with the exact same defense as Walnut, giving you an effortless, spammable defense plant that shouldn't have no worrying and losing, as you can easily fix it quickly once you reach its final stage, or just place another one once more as it doesn't even cost that much either, 75 sun cost to be exact. The second biggest pro is the fact that Gargantuars can't kill them instantly, only dealing 1,500 damage towards it. Honestly deserves its spot here 100%. Nut. Nut is a perfect example of a modern PVZ2 plant being way too powerful and having no sense of balance to it at all. Because of this, it's an extremely overpowered defense plant. It does have less toughness than Walnut, 1000 less, but it costs the exact same as one and only has a small 10-second recharge. This 10-second recharge is crazy with the fact that it can do the exact same damage as a cherry bomb, an instant 3x3 explosion once it's destroyed. A 10-second recharge explosive defense plant cannot be ignored, and it's insane how much of a power creep this is once you compare it to other defense plants with a similar sun cost. Lastly, Infinite. He does have only half of the toughness as Walnut, 2000, but it's capable of regenerating over time, 15 seconds after taking damage. Even if he reaches his final stage and disappears, he'll still heal up, though that's not the only thing that's efficient. What puts Infinite so high in the amazing tier in the first place is its plant food. The plant food not only heals the Infinite, but it creates a shield covering all lanes in front of it, being able to absorb a whopping 10,000 damage. It can absorb Gargantuar hits, and can block flying zombies. So yeah, that's why it's on this tier in the first place. Now, the final plant of the amazing tier. Blockoli. Blockoli is the calm before the storm, the plant before things went bad. But anyway, Blockoli is pretty impressive. I believe all the amazing tier plants are all tied, though Blockoli has some strengths that I wanted to leave for the end that I'm surprised he has. Let's start with his statistics. Blockoli has a high toughness of 6,000. It's not as much as Tana or Gumnut, but trust me, he is a little better than them as he's not only really situational, but he's pretty much what Tana should have been, to be honest. He's not just a wall plant, but he slams floret shields that can stun any nearby zombie for 3 seconds, able to do a high 95 damage once he slams them as well. He does have to recharge these florets, though it's only a small cooldown of 13 seconds. It's only a 13-second wait. When Blockoli is able to stun any zombie, even Gargantuars, that's pretty effective and a great way to stall, making him not just a high defense plant that has a smaller recharge than Tana, but a staller too. Well, he's the only plant that's immune to fisher zombies and excavator zombies. Fisherman zombies cannot touch him at all, making it super effective and big with reach. Anytime you see fisherman zombies, just always use Blockoli, and that takes off one of the most annoying zombies in the game from being annoying at all. Same with excavator zombies, which are pretty difficult to stall as well. If only Tangler had the ability to do this. I believe with how effective this plant can be with its stunning capability, recharge time, and the fact that it can counter these two zombies, it deserves its place here in the amazing tier. And that's what we got for the defensive plants. Obviously guys, this is just my opinion and I could be wrong on some of these ratings, but let me know where you guys would rate certain defensive plants down below. I'm pretty curious. My next ratings when it comes to PVZ2 will most likely be all the melee plants or all the mushrooms. I'm not sure yet. That's about it guys. See ya.